I envy the El Caporal division. I envy you guys, not because of your stupid draft picks or your stupid waiver pickups. I envy you because you have competition over on the other side. Ed's 4-2. He's at the top of the division. Jay's 3-3. But you could argue that Jay's team is just as good. I would argue that Jay's team is and will be better moving forward. But in the number one division, there's so much distance. I feel like I've been left out in the cold. I feel like the outcast in that division. Because I can confidently say at this early point of the season that you can just give me the bye already. Just give it to me. To quote Rorschach in Watchmen when he poured the bubbling oil over that guy's face when he tested him in prison, I don't think you all understand. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me. Orlando is 3-3. Hensel's 3-3. Eric's 3-3. And Paul's 2-4 because he drafted like an asshole. But there's so much distance between even Orlando and I. And the reason why I say that is because Orlando's suffering from one of the worst diseases that you could suffer from as a fantasy owner. And that's touchdown dependency. Yes, it hurts me to say. But Orlando's number one pick was Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon is pretty much performing like you would want your number one pick to perform. And he's pretty much the exception. Even though he only has 100-yard rushing game, he seems to be picking up points on the passing game. But when you get down to Carlos Hyde, who, I mean, with exception to his week 2 performance, which he had 124 points, 124 yards, I'm sorry. He has 84 yards, 68, 11, 28, 2 touchdowns last week, which gave him 18 points. And then you move on to Dez Bryant, who at this point, I'm not quite sure why Dak isn't really fucking with him, but I'm happy about the fact that he isn't, and Dak is still thriving. But you've got Dez Bryant, who's got 43 yards, 59 yards, 12 yards, 98 yards, 52, and his highest performance of the season is 11. If your team is touchdown dependent, if your players are touchdown dependent, then you can say goodbye to 18, 19, 22-point performances because your players are always going to pretty much teeter between 9 to 14 points every week. It's mostly going to be at the lower end of that because most of your points are going to be made up of yardage. It's always going to be 60-yard performances or 70-yard performances. Darren Funchess is his best wide receiver. And even he hasn't had a 100-yard performance either. He's got 20 yards, 68 yards, 58 yards, 70 yards, 53 yards, 36 yards. And that's depending on Cam Newton. I mean, if your best receiver is a Cam Newton receiver, then that's pretty much a red flag. Andy, I know you're listening. Amari Cooper on his bench, Mike Gillislee, and Jamal Charles. Orlando's bench is just made up of just failed experiments. Just Amari Cooper is just he's been a complete and utter flop. Mike Gillislee, he's pretty much giving you what a New England running back would give you. And there's so much distance between Orlando and I, and Orlando also has been the beneficiary of the lowest points scored against this point of the season with 435. So teams really aren't performing against him. But what's the other reason why I say that there's so much distance between Orlando and I? And it's because Orlando is in bed with Andy. And you never want to be in bed with Andy in anything in fantasy. You don't want to be comparable to Andy. You don't want to be your numbers. You don't want them to match Andy's or be in the same neighborhood as Andy. But Orlando and Andy are the only team so far this season without 100-point weeks. Think about that for a second. And then consider this. Consider Eric's team, okay? He's got Latavius Murray, who's playing like shit. He's depending on Drew Brees. Oh, wait, no, he's not depending on Drew Brees. Eric's got security. You see, because Eric's doing the same thing that he's pretty much done every season. That's why I don't talk about Eric that much on the recaps, because Eric's pretty much managed his team the way he always has since the beginning of time, and it keeps giving him the same results. Eric's not depending on Drew Brees. No. Eric's got Eli Manning on his bench. And if that wasn't enough, Eric's got Ben Roethlisberger for some extra security. Just an awful bench that's just... I'm not even going to comment anymore on Eric's team. If we want to just illustrate more distance, look at Hensel. First of all, it's Hensel, and you just figure if injuries come along, it's, the same story. Injuries come along, Hensel's not going to know what to do. He's just going to be all over the place. Fortunately for Hensel, he picked up Kirk Cousins. That was a good pickup. But look at the rest of Hensel's team. And Hensel has also benefited off his last 2 weeks facing Paul and Eric. Hensel won in week 5, 78-55 against Eric. And just this week, he defeated Paul 87-67. Moving on to Paul. This has been the theme of Paul's whole season. Paul's whole season is just scoring the least amount of points as possible. Just he puts up a 57 week 1, a 61 week 2, week 3, 45 in his loss to me. Week 4, 106 points. He beats Orlando. Week 5, 77 points. And week 6, 67, as I said. So that is the competition pretty much in the division. And let's not even bring up, or rather let me bring up, the fact that the point totals are just so just far off. I mean, I have 653. You have Orlando with 499, 459 for Eric, Taint Sweat with 413, and Hensel with 401. So we're possibly looking at those bottom 2 teams of Hensel and Paul by the end of this week, probably still being under 500 the way things are going. I mean, I could easily see Paul put up another 60-point performance and Hensel, probably like a 70 or an 80. But that's the competition that I have in my league. So I envy Ed. I envy Jay. And that's about it. Oh. This is your week 6 recap. And there was a big injury this week that affected several fantasy owners. And that, of course, was the injury to Aaron Rodgers. I mentioned Jay's team and how Jay's team is pretty much performing well. For the last 3 weeks, he scored over 100 points. He seems to have responded to that that shout out that I gave him a couple weeks ago when I told him that his team was not his record, and it seems like Jay's self-esteem has gone through the roof. But Aaron Rodgers is injured, so what that means for Jay is his number 1 wide receiver is going to suffer. Well, at least not statistically, but you would expect Davante Adams to be his number 1 wide receiver, and he's had some pretty good performances so far this season. He is the 5th ranked wide receiver, but that's going to drop significantly, especially over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Next, we have Eric, who has Jordy Nelson, who is the 4th ranked wide receiver with 63 total points. And of course, there's Andy, who is the owner of Aaron Rodgers. And Andy was actually able to do something useful for himself, even though I think picking up quarterbacks and hoarding them in your bench, I think, is mostly a moronic practice. It worked in Andy's favor this time because he had Carson Wentz sitting in his bench, and now that's pretty much going to be his quarterback the rest of the way. As far as running backs, I don't know what this is going to mean for Montgomery. That's his name, right? I think, right, that's the one that Eric has. What is it, Ty Montgomery? Yeah, I don't know what that's going to mean for Ty Montgomery. I don't know what it's going to mean for Aaron Jones, but I would hope that with Rodgers being gone now, maybe they go more run heavy. I don't think that's going to be the case, but again, that's what I would hope it to be. I also want to comment that yes, I did see Ed randomly at a mall just last week, And I got on Ed for being a little silent bitch this whole season. And among other things that we discussed, I mean, Ed just went off for like 15 minutes about Paul's team and I was just like, Ed, I gotta go, man. And Ed was just like, and another thing, and it was basically like borderline obsessive. I don't know, but Ed decided to actually participate. But in a very odd way here, Ed decided to comment in the message board of all places. I look, in my opinion, I think this is Ed's passive aggression. I think this is Ed taking his anger out on the league, but just in a very passive way. So what he decided to do was, on the message board, he says, "Yeah, seem to be slacking. It's getting lonely at the top here in my division." You notice how he says division, right? He doesn't say it's getting lonely at the top. See, this is the problem with Ed. And just when you guys just talk shit in general, you guys just can't address it to everybody. Ed somehow thinks that I am superior to him just because I have 2 more wins than him. That's his, that's his mental problem, not mine. I'd be fucking 2-4 and I'd still be fucking talking shit. He goes on to say, "Paul, you should just hand me the belt because you're making it look bad with that shitty ass team and record. Step your game up, bitches." And then the commission pretty much redirects him to the group where he should have fucking said the message in the first place. Paul, I'm going to be honest with you. Underachieving is a word that you like to use a lot in the chat. You keep saying like, "Oh, my team is underachieving. My team is underachieving." I'd hate to break it to you, right? Because underachieving is basically, by definition, it's like if you're expected to, let me just confirm that, right? Underachieving is, here it is, do less than is expected, especially in schoolwork. I don't know why they added in the schoolwork, but here's where I'm going to correct you, Paul. No one expected you to do good this season, okay? Underachieving doesn't apply to you. You won a championship, and you think just because you won a championship that you're expected to do well this season. No. I didn't expect you to do well because I didn't think you had a great team last season. You're expecting yourself to do well, and I just went off of your drafting that I wasn't expecting your team to do well. So your team is basically performing where it should be performing. Stop saying underachieving. Your team is not underachieving. Your team is what it is, and it will continue to be what it is. I don't think you're making the playoffs, which would be sad. Which would be sad if you don't make the playoffs, because if you win a championship and the next year you don't even fucking show up to the dance, that's horrible. And I'm going to tell you another thing, Paul. I don't appreciate the fact that you want the belt. And because you're not going to make the playoffs, and you're just going to make it harder for us to get the belt. That's all you're going to do. I mean, you live very far from the city. I've been to your home. You have a nice home. You live very far from the city, and it's going to be fucking insanely difficult to get that belt back from you. You're not going to win. Paul, come on. Let's have a heart-to-heart here, Paul. Come on. Let's really talk about this. I mean, your number 1 pick, LaShawn McCoy. Dude, look, he had a good week. Week 1, right? 110 yards, and he got 15 points. That's pretty much been his strongest week so far. After that, he had 12 rushes for 9 yards in week 2. Then he got 21 yards week 3, then 76, 63. He's just, it's all like just single-digit performances. Who knows what you're going to do with Mike Evans? Should you trade Mike Evans? I've told you about this before, Paul. You keep holding on to Keenan Allen. I mean, LeGarrette Blount is, somebody who gave you success last year, but LeGarrette Blount's just one of those guys where you wouldn't be surprised if he scored 20 points, but you also wouldn't be surprised if he scored 7. So, again, what does he really mean? You picked up Eddie Lacy. I'm just going fucking, look, guys, look. I'm not treating you guys with kid gloves anymore. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys on who's got a chance and who doesn't. Paul, you're done. If you made the playoffs, I would be so surprised at this point. That's how bad your team is. Because don't forget, a couple of weeks ago when I told you guys, when I was contrasting Hensel with Paul, and I was telling you that there was maybe 4 points separating Paul from Hensel, considering the fact that Hensel's first 2 weeks, he wasn't even participating. So he had 2 zeros at the quarterback position, and there was only 4 points that separated Paul from Hensel. At this point, Paul has 413 points, and Hensel has 401. Hensel's team is without a doubt better than Paul's. Like, that's not even a thing that, a lot of things that I say, you guys probably think I'm just making it up and I just want to hear myself talk. That's a fact at this point. Hensel's team is better. Like, especially now that he has Kirk Cousins. I mean, now at this point for Hensel, his challenge is actually updating his team and putting players in slots. That's all he would need to be better than you at this point, Paul. So I don't know how to make this any more clear to you. Ed is absolutely right, by the way. Go fuck yourself, Paul. I don't even know why I just decided to single you out like that, Paul. I apologize. So let's move on to our week 6 scores. You had Andy losing to Peggy, 113-80. Of course, I am the highest scoring team of the week. We have Paul, as I said, losing to Hensel, 67 points to 87. Eric losing to Orlando, 96-65. Dad Bod defeating Ed, 101-89. And Pedro in a barn burner. Right? Is barn burner, is that the term for like for high scoring performances? A barn burner, 59-57. He loses to Joe. So let's move on to the week 7 matchups. We have Joe going up against Peggy. And again, I mean, I pretty much think I got that one in the bag. I mean, barring some ridiculous Tom Brady performance with Gronk, I think that one's pretty much in the bag, and I'll be 7-0. We have Taint Sweat. See, that's what happens when I think of Paul. I burp. We have Taint Sweat going up against Eric. Both projected to have pretty high scores. I mean, I don't know why. Let's take a look at. Okay, you have Drew Brees going up against Green Bay. Well, I don't know. You're both projected to get pretty much high scores, but I wouldn't be surprised if you guys got 57 and 59 points apiece, like Joe and Pedro. We have Hensel going up against Orlando. Now, this matchup is pivotal for the number 1 division. This matchup is going to determine who's going to lick Peggy's ass. I mean, this is a high-intensity fantasy football right here. We have Jay going up against Andy and Pedro against Ed. I don't know how to make this any more clear to everyone in the number 1 division. See, I'm not getting to spitting that much venom against all you other guys on the other side. I make vague comments, and as we move closer and closer to that to playoff time, you guys will be getting a lot more venom. But I can't make it any more clear to anyone in the number 1 division. I don't think you guys understand. And as always, may your quarterbacks get hurt before they leave the locker room. May your running backs pull their hamstrings, and may your wide receivers get arrested for marijuana possession. Andy, cut it out.